is going to try this, and it will be a 60, let's call it 63-yard attempt. Spotted at the Bronco 47-yard line. Sam's a little hot. Elam's kick. Oh, the line drive. It's got enough distance.
All right, welcome to Long Distance Kicks, where it's always good. My name is Rhett Johnson, and joining me today is our very first guest host here on Long Distance Kicks. Um, Ian is on vacation, and so we want him to be enjoying time with family and getting away from things like having the podcast. And so today, our distance is not all that long. Joining me from the same state of New Hampshire, one of my dearest friends in the whole world, also a newly minted doctor of philosophy in chemistry. Uh,
hmm
Welcome to the show, our uh, guest host, CJ Wilson, Dr. Siege. CJ, how are you feeling this evening?
Hey, I am feeling great. I have been so excited for this opportunity. We've been talking about doing a podcast episode together for literally years, so I am super pumped to be joining you. Thanks for the invite.
Dude, yeah, I know. This has been fun, and for this show, with the preseason is literally just about to start. It starts tonight for the Denver Broncos.
hmm
We're very excited, but it is about time for people to start looking at fantasy drafts. This is the season for it. This is when it starts happening here in the next couple weeks. And I know one of the dilemmas that I can run into every year as a Broncos fan is this: how good are the players that I've actually been watching? I want to draft Broncos players, but a lot of times I find that I just simply can't because I think so much of them. I think the world of these guys, but this year, my hope for all of us is that instead of having to swear off our favorite players or maybe overdraft them just to simply have them on our
hmm
team, I want to get a good objective view of our Broncos players. And so, my friend CJ is maybe the perfect person to ask because you need to understand some things about um, one Charles Wilson. He is number one, an incredible fantasy football player. This man is. I'm in two different fantasy leagues with him, and he came in second in our fantasy league this year in the regular season, and he did not have a first, second, or third round pick, and still placed second behind me when I had multiple seconds. I had like three
You had
seconds.
my
I
my
had
first round pick, my top picks. Yeah.
I trusted the process last year. And we also are in a dynasty league together. And it's going really well for CJ and not so much for me. And secondly, the thing that's maybe the most important thing about CJ is that CJ is not a Broncos fan. CJ is a
It's true.
Patriots fan. He's from the area, uh, and not even really like I don't know. CJ, you're just kind of an enjoyer of football more than really any like. I don't
hmm
know how you would like to say, but if you'd like to speak a little bit to your relationship to fantasy football, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I think enjoyer of football is the best way to describe me. Like, I do definitely root for the Patriots. Like, moved up to New Hampshire. My wife grew up, loving the Patriots, so I definitely root for them. But yeah, my dive into fantasy, fantasy football is really just brings together all of my favorite things into one spot where I get to talk to my friends about football and I get to watch cool plays, cool sports things. And then I also get to play with numbers, which I like to do. And I feel like that's kind of where I can, bring a little bit of my, brain power to fantasy football. It gives me a little bit of an edge, I think, but also still have fun. still have fun with it. So yeah, I think it fantasy football lets me enjoy more football
Mm,
because, all of a sudden, whereas before it's like, yeah, I'm only going to watch Patriots games, or maybe if there's a big, like Chiefs Rams a few years ago, like this huge thing that's going to happen, I'll watch that. Um, but like it makes, the a Jets Jaguars game interesting, right? When you have a Thursday night game and you're trying to figure out like, am I going to start this guy? And then you're watching like every play of the game to see like, oh, okay, PPR, like that's a catch, that's a point, that's a catch, that's a point. Like I don't necessarily care that Braxton Berrios is probably not going to be on an NFL team in a couple years. Tonight, he's got 8 targets by
what?
8 targets in the third quarter, and that's all I care about, right? But it's fun. It makes all football accessible,
Hmm.
and so I get to enjoy more football, which is just fun.
Yeah. Um, I love that. I will say one last bit of anecdotal backing up evidence. Whenever sports gambling became legalized in our state, CJ and I got really into placing 10-cent bets. Like that's the smallest amount
Yep,
that you can bet. Do little tiny micro bets. And CJ,
yep.
in the middle of COVID, got deep into the weeds of NBA role player. Blocks
Oh,
and steals over under,
oh
and
yeah,
in made like multiple. It sounds so dumb, but it's a dozen time, made
yeah,
tens of dollars.
yeah.
Bet-
Right. Yeah.
betting random NBA role player over unders
Yes.
for steals and blocks, like just figuring out where will the big
Yeah.
businesses not go? Where are they not looking? Where can CJ look?
Where,
And so
where do they truly not care? Like they
yeah.
don't care that they should probably take this guy's blocks from, point
Yeah,
0.5 to
five. Yeah.
1.5, and they just listen, they don't
It's a
care,
it's a
and I'll make
depression.
50 cents. like,
There's a depression in the market. I need to hit it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that in mind, with that brain, I'd love to walk through some of the Broncos players, but first I want to give you an objectivity test to make sure that you really don't have any pro Denver Broncos bias. So CJ,
Okay.
it may also make you just like a hated person by the
Listen.
droves of
Right. Yeah.
fans that we have
Uh-huh.
here. Um, but CJ, John Elway is a top blank quarterback all time.
Uh, let's see. I do actually have a sweet spot for John Elway. And I'd say like top 12. Like he'd be at the back end of that. I could
Awesome,
see
cool.
like,
What's it
you
like being
know.
a terrorist?
Oh God.
John Elway is a
I like
top three quarterback of all time.
a
It's
top
him and Peyton
three.
Manning,
Oh,
and
wait, wait,
then
wait. No, no, no.
maybe
I need you to tell me seriously. You think he's a top three quarterback all time? I need you to.
well, listen.
Uh-huh.
If John Elway got to play in today's NFL,
No, no,
he
no.
would
That's
be
not.
better
That's
than
not.
Patrick Mahomes.
Wait. Okay. That's
John
that.
Elway
You're.
is
That's
John
never
Elway.
going to work. That argument is never going to.
It's always going to work. John Elway was
Oh
sick.
gosh.
John Elway was sicker than
Uh-huh.
any other of all the all-time great quarterbacks. The most
Uh-huh.
sick was John Elway. He did sick stuff all the time. He was unbelievable. And anyway, CJ's seems to be
All
he
right.
may be horribly biased against the Broncos. I don't know. My
I
sense
might be.
this whole episode is like this. I've decided this is good for me, and I will. It's like going to the dentist or something. Like I'm like this is going to be good for me. I want to hear what CJ thinks
Yeah.
about my team in like in a not being nice to me way, and also I'm not gonna like it. I'm not gonna be nice. This is gonna be a tension filled show, and let's get into the
Yeah.
tension, huh?
Uh-huh.
CJ, Bo
Oof.
Nix, what do we think? Is he someone that can be a QB1 on your fantasy team this year, or is
Mm.
he, you know, not?
So I want you to know that like throughout all of this, that everything I'm gonna say, I did my best to do my due diligence. Okay.
Mhm.
So like I looked into the stats. I don't know, I don't want to overuse deep dive, but I definitely dug in and I actually made a new stat to try to quantify some of the weirdness with Bo Nix's QB1 season last season. Because last season
Okay.
he was the QB7 for at least the league that we play in. It was a super flex, 6 point passing touchdown, which is really the part you care about.
Yeah. So
So
what you're
6 points,
saying is, even in a 10-team league with one quarterback
yeah.
per each team, Bo Nix was someone that you could say what was is your starter, and like is that like it would have been a fine selection to go with him as your,
Mm.
your go-to QB.
100%. Yeah. He
Okay.
was absolutely last year in a 10-team league. Over the course of the season, was definitely somebody that you could stream at the position. And definitely, second half for sure, after the bye for sure, was somebody that was, you know, maybe not necessarily winning you weeks on his own,
Hmm.
but he was not failing you as a quarterback by any means. And definitely impressive for a rookie. But so what I wanted to look at was I kept hearing, not just from you, but as I'm listening, I consume a lot of fantasy content, probably more than I should, and I kept hearing that he can do it with his legs, right? That's something that is talked about as a cheat code for fantasy football is quarterbacks that can also use their legs, right? Because it gives you a floor. So even if they're having a bad day, right, like a Josh Allen is going to, even if he's having a bad passing day, there's a really good likelihood that he has a touchdown on the ground and 40, 50, 40, 50 yards rushing maybe. And so that's like 10 points right there. That's just, you can just add on. So if he's having a bad quarterback day at like 15 points or so, you can just add 10 onto that, 25
Hmm.
points. And that's a good day. That is a good fantasy day. And on the flip side, if he's having a good passing day, he's also probably still running in a touchdown and getting those 40 rushing yards or whatever. And so his ceiling is so much higher. And that's what we've seen with Josh Allen the last several years.
Hmm.
It's what we've seen with Lamar Jackson, obviously Jalen Hurts out of, Philadelphia with the tush push and everything. We've seen these guys almost breaking fantasy football. And so I kept hearing about Bo Nix potentially breaking into that, having that rushing upside, having that rushing floor that makes some of these quarterbacks so valuable. And so I was like, oh, let me just take a look and at the stats, what I wanted to see was what I was expecting to see was that when Bo Nix had his really great games, right, his ceiling games, when he performed the best of the season, what was his rushing, right? How much
Hmm.
was that actually helping? And I expected to see, like, again, it's very similar to Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, whatever the case might be, that, on those ceiling games, he's really getting a nice boost from the rushing. And then he's got, a nice little floor in games where he's a little bit lower. And honestly, I did not see a difference. And
Hmm.
that is what sparked this whole spreadsheet that I have open right now. And so I'm gonna
Okay.
run you through it. So this stat is what I'm calling PAR, and it's really going to be the PAR differential that we're looking at. So PAR, as I'm defining it here, is points added by rushing. Okay, so that is taking out all the passing information. It's just points that are added just from rushing. So that's right, rush attempts if your league has it, rushing yards, rushing touchdowns. I'm just
Okay.
considering the yards and touchdowns here. And then this is completely arbitrary. I just picked a spot, but if we're talking QB1, right, is it going to be QB1? I split it into the PAR that you have that the quarterback has if they finish QB1 or through QB10.
Okay.
Okay, so if they had a top 10 weekly fantasy finish, I took their PAR, and then I have a separate column of plus 10. So anything higher, if they were the QB 20 on the week, if they were the QB
Hmm.
15 on the week, whatever it was, that's a second column, and I took the PAR that I was interested in there. And what I found was, so I picked for this the other like rushing quarterbacks that
Hmm.
everyone kind of considers, and it's the top four quarterbacks being taken off the board. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, and Jalen Hurts. So those are the top four quarterbacks going off the board, and the reason is because they're rushing quarterbacks. That's what they're known for. And last year, in that order, they finished QB1, QB2, QB5, and then Jalen Hurts was QB8. And just as a reminder, Bo Nix was QB7. So it's a nice little spread there with Bo Nix in the middle. So what I found was Lamar Jackson in games where he finishes as a QB1 through 10, so he finishes as a QB1, he has 7.6 of his points are coming from rushing.
Okay.
In losses, 3.6. So that is a PAR differential of 4. So he is getting 4 extra points in games where they're winning, right? Big games where he's having a big day.
Yeah.
Josh Allen, those numbers are 10.4 when he's having a big day, and only 3.5 when he's having a bad game. Jalen Hurts, 12.2, so even higher, pretty good. So in when he's having a good QB day, he's getting 12.2 points on average. And then when he's having a bad day, 6.2. Jaden Daniels, basically the same numbers, 11.5 on a good day, 3.9 on a bad day. Bo Nix is 4.1 on a good day, 3.8 on a bad day. And so to put that into perspective, Lamar Jackson, if we're looking at that differential, has a PAR differential of 4. Josh Allen has a differential of 7. Jaden Daniels is at 7.6. Jalen Hurts is at 6. Bo Nix is at 0.3. And
So he's not operating as a dual threat in fantasy in terms of like that's where he's getting his big games. He's getting his big games through the air.
Exactly. And so to follow that up, that's an excellent point. To follow that up, so as an example, just to take the quarterback that was in the lead with the rushing that was getting the biggest lift from their rushing was Jaden Daniels, right? He had that PAR differential of 7.6. If we look at just the QB3 or better games, so absolute tippy top, they are finishing as the QB1, the QB2, or the QB3 on a week, right? They're tippy top best games. Now, if we switch and look at the passing, in a tippy top game for Jaden Daniels, he's passing for 235 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. Right, so that is his tippy top games. And I don't know about you, that doesn't sound fantastic to me, right?
Yeah.
Like 235, 2 and touchdowns and a pick is not screaming fantastic to me, but he's getting those stats when he's a QB1, QB2, QB1, QB3, QB3, right?
Yeah.
Bo Nix, on the other hand, when he is a QB1, 2, or 3 last season, he is averaging 304 yards passing, 4 touchdown passes, and 0 picks. So what I'm seeing is that in those tippy top games for Bo Nix, rushing really isn't doing anything for him. In the tippy top games, it's passing. He is actually a way better passer than at least I thought. I'm sure you and Broncos fans saw it and know that.
Yeah.
But for me, that was actually pretty shocking. And with that PAR number, if you look at that low bound, right, and the floor production that you're getting, Lamar Jackson, 3.6 on those low games. So that is the little, you get a little extra boost of 3.6 points from rushing. Josh Allen, 3.5. Jalen Hurts, 6.2, which is actually pretty good. Jaden Daniels, 3.9. Bo Nix, 3.8. They're all the same. Same exact floor, basically, except Jalen Hurts has a little more. And then you look at, again, Bo Nix's ceiling, 4.1. It's basically the same number.
Yeah.
So what that tells me is your question, going back to the question you asked at the beginning, is Bo Nix a QB1? I say yes, because he's putting up the floor rushing numbers and he's having ceiling games where he's passing in an expert way. However, I think he is not going to be the QB1. It doesn't seem like he has the potential to do a Josh Allen, to do a Jalen Hurts, to do a Lamar Jackson, where they're getting, okay, yeah, Jalen Hurts is getting, I'm looking at his points added from rushing, and we're like 14.5 points added from rushing, right? 21.7. He had a game where he had 22 points just from rushing, right?
Dang.
That is
Yeah.
probably not coming from Bo Nix. Bo Nix, on the other hand, his games where he was a top 10 quarterback on a week, the points he got from rushing 6.9,
Hmm.
6.1, 6.4, zero point 0.5, and zero point 0.5.
Yeah.
He does not have the ceiling of some of these guys, and I don't think he's going to be a guy that gets up to that QB2, QB3, QB4 type
Hmm.
of level. I don't think it's necessarily fair to bet on that. But in terms of, it's actually made me more comfortable when I'm in drafts and looking at where you can get Bo Nix. I'm a little bit more comfortable saying, actually, though, he's a guy that, he has the same rushing floor as those guys. So he's less
Hmm.
likely to have a bad day, a truly bad day, and kill you in a week. And then when he has those big games, it's because he's a really good passer. And
Mm.
that's the type of stuff that is something you can trust. I trust that the offense is going to get better this year. Yeah.
I find that super interesting because, like you said, as much as this is supposed to be about fantasy, it's also just
Hmm.
about the general idea of who Bo Nix is as a quarterback. And we've heard,
Hmm.
that he is game manager, not a lot of downfield
Hmm.
throws, not going to be a guy that goes and wins games for you. And then on the fantasy side, you're looking and going, well, he might be one of those dual threats if they get him involved
Hmm.
in the running game more. And his success was largely kind of credited to that. Okay, well, he can run, but really it seems more like he's not as much a running quarterback. He's not getting touchdowns in his games, and it's 3 point whatever, 4 point whatever. That means he's not scoring touchdowns. Like he's not
Yeah.
like
He had
like he's
four.
just
He had
he's
four
not getting in the
touchdowns
end
on the
zone.
ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had
Like
four
he's
touchdowns on the
getting
ground.
20 or 30 yards rushing, or every once in a while is like QB sneaking the ball into the end zone. But like he's not,
Hmm.
there wasn't any Bo Nix like 35-yard rushing touchdowns, big point
Yes.
plays.
Right.
And
Right.
that tells me, like, it tells this story of, oh, he's a scrambler. And it, like, I think a lot of what Bo Nix does is simply like not he does a lot of good jobs of not like making the huge, big, terrible, awful
Hmm.
mistake all the time. I would say from watching him last year, his one of his big fantasy plus sides, that I'd love to dig more into the stats, is sack avoidance. It's really hard to sack Bo Nix. He doesn't get
Hmm.
sacked a lot.
Yeah.
Like he gets the ball out quick, and a
Right.
lot of times, even when the rush got there, um, Bo is a big, strong dude. Like he's built like one of those running quarterbacks, and so
Hmm.
it's hard for the first guy. You have to really get him good to get him down on the ground before he can either get the ball away, make a play with his legs, and so you don't get those negative plays from taking sacks, but you
Yeah.
get that little boost where compared to the other pocket passers, where if you're looking at, I was about to say Joe Burrow, but he's on a different level. He's so good that he's
Yeah.
above Bo Nix, like he's there. But some of the other guys that you might look at, even a CJ Stroud or
Hmm.
someone of that ilk, where it's like pocket
Yeah.
passer, not gonna get a lot in the run game, but he could go off for 40 touchdowns this year and have a great year. Bo Nix
Right.
is like the halfway point there, where it's like, no, actually going to get like, he's not going to give you just an absolutely terrible game in fantasy, but he'll keep you alive. So
Hmm.
I like it. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
He's living in that world between, you have to go get this guy, first or second round, and
Hmm.
the like litany, the list of 20 different quarterbacks where it's like, okay, I mean, they're just
Yeah.
all right, and kind of having to stream it.
Hmm.
Well, uh, awesome. That's great. My opinions are is that if you want to take Bo Nix in the first round, I won't say anything. Listen, if you want to go
I
get
will say something.
go get your quarterback if you believe in him,
I
because we're gonna keep the highs, and then we're going to start incorporating him in the ground game more. We're going to have a better rushing attack. So he's going to start, he's what we're if we can just get him to be as good as, like Lamar Jackson at running, then
Sure.
then he's
Yeah.
the best
Yeah.
fantasy player ever, right?
That's so projected outcomes. Let's talk about a name that I actually was wanted to bring up just as a cautionary tale. I'll say, like my recommendation for
Yeah.
my fantasy football recommendation for Bo Nix, if you're looking at him, looking to draft him, I would say go for it because
Mhm.
I don't
What?
necessarily know that I'm chasing Bo Nix in drafts. I think there's one or two other guys that I might be a little bit more interested in based on where he's going. However, I think he is going appropriately. And that's one of the things that I want to highlight just about fantasy in general and the conversations that we have moving forward is it is all about value. When you're
Mhm.
drafting, it is all about values. I never want to get a guy where his value actually is, right? So if Bo Nix is someone that, let's say I've determined that he's worth an 8 round pick, that's where he is going, or that's where I think his actual value is, right?
Mhm.
And then I have to draft him in the 8th round. I feel bad about that. I'm like, I can't do it. I don't want to take him at his value. I want to be looking for guys because I think, and this might be to my detriment, but I always feel like if I'm in the 8th round and I'm looking at the wide receivers there, I'm looking at the running backs there, I'm looking at the guys there, when I'm looking for a guy that should have been in the 6th round,
Mhm.
right? But is there in the 8th, and I can get that 6th round value in the 8th. If I'm in the 3rd round, I want to be looking at a guy that I believe is going to be in the first next year, or should have been in the first this year, right? Like I'm always looking for that value. And so when I see a guy like Bo Nix, I think Bo Nix is actually going right about where he should be going. And so for me personally, I don't know that I'll draft him, but I think that if you do, it's not a bad choice. I think it's a good decision. I think he will be a QB1, barring any injuries or issues like that. I think just the consistency of the coaching staff and the rest of the team is
Mhm.
should really help. Like I think the Broncos are trending up as an actual NFL franchise. So, as far as fantasy goes, like I'd be perfectly happy if you gave me Bo Nix as my quarterback and just put him on my team. I'd be perfectly happy with that. Um, but yeah, that's kind of my fantasy take.
All right. So the official recommendation of the Long Distance Kids Pod is this: if you are in a fantasy league with family members that are also Broncos fans, don't draft Bo Nix. Let them draft Bo Nix in
Yeah,
the third, and
right.
just enjoy having him in your real football team.
Hmm.
Um,
Yes,
and I pray that all of you made the decision to draft him in Dynasty last year, and then just
there you
enjoy,
go.
enjoy that. Or be like me. We have a keeper league, and I get Bo Nix for like a 10th or 11th round pick this year because I drafted
Hmm.
him last year. So we love that.
Yep.
Uh, Speaking of value, you talked about
Hmm.
everything comes down to value. I have
Yeah.
a question here of value. In the running back position for the Denver Broncos, we have two
Mm.
guys in the backfield, a proverbial two-headed monster, if you will, or possibly a two-headed, just normal predatory animal. Um, if we're, trying to bring the objectivity here, but RJ Harvey, exciting, flashy. Uh,
Hmm.
Wears
Yep.
37, so that might ruin all of it. But
Oh,
bad
that's
dude,
so
yeah, bad
bad.
number vibes.
That's
Bad number
so
vibes.
bad. Dude,
Um,
30s plus for a running back just gives me the ick. Like,
it's tough. I'm really hoping that they do like roster cut down and then he
yeah.
chooses a different number. Like I'm not sure how that's gonna work, but
Hmm.
um RJ Harvey we're very excited about him, second round pick, and
Hmm.
everyone wants to envision him as Sean Payton's new favorite toy. But then also we have added veteran J.K. Dobbins, who
Yeah.
is just a genuinely solid, really good NFL running back that's had success. And so, CJ,
Yep.
tell the people, um, which in the conversation of value, what is the better value play? Is it trusting that J.K. Dobbins will be like the meat and potatoes, good, hearty, healthy running back that will get most of the carries, or do we invest in the potential boomer bust pick of an R.J. Harvey?
Yeah. That's a so I love this because this is another great I almost want to say like trope in fantasy football. This happens all of the time where
Hmm.
you're looking at, and there's actually something out there called the ambiguous backfield theory, right? Where
Mm,
it is every year there is a ton of value that comes out of ambiguous backfields. So that is where typically kind of defined, again, everything in fantasy is a little amorphous, but it's typically defined as when you have two guys in a backfield that are typically going later in drafts and are about within 2 rounds of each other.
hmm.
It can be larger than that, especially if it's round 10 or like later. Maybe a guy's in round 10 and then the other guy's undrafted. Like those, once you get past round 10, the rounds don't really matter.
Hmm.
Take whatever guys you feel once you get past that threshold. And so the ambiguous backfield theory is there are a lot of times when, like for example, a couple years ago you had Raheem Mostert, right, finishes the
Hmm.
RB2 on the season, and I think he was going probably in the 11th round. And you had like Devon Achan, who was an exciting rookie but really
Hmm.
small, like, and there were like concerns about him and his durability. There was Chase Edmonds, who had been really solid with the Cardinals as a backup
Yes.
for several years, and so it was like, okay, Chase Edmonds is getting his starting, maybe a starting role here. Raheem Mostert is the aged veteran, and then you've got this exciting backup in Devon Achan, right? And it's like the cost of each of those guys, like the uncertainty is baked into their ADP, right? It's baked into their average
Hmm.
draft position. So they're being drafted way late. And so if you're looking at, Raheem Mostert and saying, yeah, he's going to be the RB2 on a season, he would have been drafted way higher, but nobody knew if he was going to be worth anything, right? Was he just going to get was he going to be on the bench the whole season? Nobody knew ahead of time.
So it's
So
kind of like is it Schrodinger's cat or whatever, where
it's
two
Schrodinger's
realities can
running back.
resist. Like Schrodinger's, because one of these guys is going to get, well, okay, it's a Sean Payton offense, so we don't know who's going to get the ball week
Yeah.
to week, but one
Hmm.
of these guys is going to end up getting most of the carries, is going to end up being the guy that whenever Sean Payton doesn't feel good about what's going on,
Yeah.
his safety safe running back is going to be one of these guys. And
Hmm.
because it could be both of them right now. Whoever it ends
Yes.
up being is being undervalued, and whoever it
Hmm.
doesn't end up being is being overvalued. We just do not know who that person is. So
Right.
you're flipping a coin. So this might be an
Right.
exciting one. This is one where I'm hearing more, and as a Broncos fan, I'm going, oh, maybe this is the situation where I
Hmm.
do step in and use my fandom of like I've been watching preseason really close. I've been watching,
Yeah.
we're been listening to training camp and reading and hearing Sean Payton's press conferences. So okay,
Hmm.
I want to hear your thoughts more as we dip in, but I'm going, okay,
Yep.
this might be a maybe go ahead and draft one of these guys.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I talked a little bit long on that one, but yeah, where I was going with that is like, I think this is, absolutely satisfying that type of situation where honestly, RJ Harvey, his ADP is pretty high. It's in like fifth, sixth round type of, in some leagues. So
He's built
he is
different
going
because he's built different.
he's and I think that there is a very real chance that we look back on the season and RJ Harvey is being drafted as a high end running back too next year. I think that is
Hmm.
absolute based on the performance this year. I think that's absolutely reasonable. That's absolutely possible. I don't think you're going to see it before week 5. There it just That would be like the
Okay.
earliest without an injury. Like rookies, unless they come in as the bell cow, like Ashton Genty is coming into the Raiders and he's the only guy, right? They drafted him
Hmm.
to be the guy. Bijan Robinson came in and they're like Tyler Algier was there, but there was a clear starter, right?
Hmm.
Najee Harris, like 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago or something, came in and it was like there is no one else. This is the guy this year, right? That is not the case, right? RJ Harvey, you mentioned with Sean Payton specifically, but I mean, honestly, just coming into a team with like J.K. Dobbins, and then there's a couple other guys you got there. Jaleel
Jaleel
McLaughlin,
McLaughlin.
I
Yeah.
think he's there. Like
Yes,
he has
he's
not,
there.
and this is a great example of fantasy being different than real football. I think
Hmm.
Jaleel McLaughlin is a useful football player for the real NFL Denver Broncos. He is worth nothing for fantasy.
Okay.
And so like he is unstartable in fantasy football, right? Nothing against him.
Yeah.
I think it's useful to have a guy like that. He's done good things for the real Broncos, but for
Hmm.
fantasy, it's just not going to be, it's just not going to be useful. And but those guys eat into the workload
Hmm.
of the guys you really care about for fantasy. And so, J.K. Dobbins going in the 10th round, right? R.J. Harvey going
Hmm.
in the 5th round. J.K. Dobbins finished as a running back too last season with the Chargers. He had games where he was scoring. Sorry, I've got it up here somewhere. Like, um, you know, he was scoring games where he had 22.9 points, 20.1, 18.2, 16.8, 24.5. Like he was adding some he had some really, really great weeks. And he missed 4 weeks from injury, man, really
Hmm.
five. And so if he had those five, or actually six, so if he had those 6 weeks at his pace, he probably would have been, again, a top end running back too.
Mm.
So that type of value, I think for the first, say, 4 weeks of the season, you're going to look back this season, you're going to look back and say, I got a running back two in the 10th round
Mm.
if you get J.K. Dobbins. And I think R.J. Harvey is not going to do anything special, or maybe he'll do something special in real life football where you're like, oh, that's exciting. He's great for the future. For fantasy, I don't think you'll see anything. And what I would hope you'd be looking for is look for someone to drop in to the waiver wire
Hmm.
in the week 3, week 4, because they're like, he's not doing anything for me. Look for someone to drop in, pick him up off the waiver wire, stash him on your bench until J.K. Dobbins gets hurt. I hope not. I
Hmm.
hope nobody gets hurt, but in case J.K. Dobbins gets hurt, or he starts to take over as the season goes on, and then you'll have him when he starts to take off.
Okay.
When you're in your draft, really the draft is when you're looking, especially at those late picks past week 8, or round 8 or something. I'd be looking for guys that are going to be start the season really strong, like a J.K.
All right.
Dobbins.
So the Dr. Siege stamp of approval goes to J.K. Dobbins. Um, Random, unrelated question, CJ. Did the Chargers did they have the league's best run blocking offensive line last year?
I'm going to go ahead and say no, they did
Oh,
not.
okay, okay. Follow-up question. Do
Uh
the
huh. Yep.
Broncos
I'm listening.
did they have the league's best run blocking offensive line last year?
I think it was up there,
It was
right? I think
certainly up there.
it was up
Our
there.
running back, our
Yeah.
our stat for our like yards above like expected or whatever on the ground. We were like the
Uh-huh.
worst team in the league for
Yeah.
it. Like all the stats are like uh the holes were there, and Jaleel was just too small, and so he got he
Mhm.
didn't get a lot if he ever got caught. There were some times where we just gave him the corner and he just took the corner untouched. Um, Javonte Williams, I don't want to go into too much slander, but
Yeah.
he couldn't find the hole, and he did so in a very slow way. Like I long for the days of
Mhm.
pre-injury Javonte, but like he was pretty awful last
Yeah.
year. So I agree that for me as a Broncos fan, that the thing that I see is J.K. Dobbins is a reliable running
Mhm.
back who's good at finding the hole, hitting it, and he's kind of hard to tackle
Yeah.
if you do get to him. And he's going to be
Yep.
running behind a bunch of guys that are just nasty. And
Hmm.
I am a big believer in J.K.
Hmm.
Dobbins this year. Although I want to be a big believer, I want it to be R.J. Harvey because I'm like,
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
you
I
know,
know. For fantasy, like I'm
it's
not
the
interested in drafting
it's like
RJ Harvey,
it's the
right?
meme where like, two guys talk to the same girl and she's like, "Oh, you're so sweet," or like, "I'm
Yeah.
calling HR," like,
The human
yeah,
resource.
like
Yeah,
human
the human
resource.
resources.
Hello.
Yes. Like yes.
uh
And I want to point out too, like I want to point out too, like the season before, like J.K. Dobbins he's had some serious
mhm,
injuries. Like you mentioned the injuries to Javonte Williams. Like J.K. Dobbins has had some
mhm,
serious injuries, and we typically see that the season after a serious
mhm,
injury where a player is having surgery, especially to the legs, like those ACL tears, MCL tears, things like that, meniscus. Like typically the season after they start off slow, and then you really see if they're back or not towards the back half of the
mhm,
season. And so then the next season, that's when they're like back. And J.K. Dobbins is a really great running back. I would be surprised if he does not, if people aren't talking about him um, as being a top. As I fully believe he could be an RB1 through the first like 4 weeks.
mhm.
I would not be
I'm really
surprised.
excited for how after this podcast, um in just a couple weeks, CJ and I will both be in a fantasy draft together, and so there will be
Yes.
the chess game of who's going to end up with J.K. Dobbins and at what value. Like,
Mm. Am I going to draft J.K. Dobbins in the eighth round so Rhett doesn't get him? It might happen. Or am I just gassing up J.K. Dobbins so
you're
that,
saying it now so that I draft him in the seventh, and you're just like,
yeah.
checkmate. Um, okay. Uh, one guy. This is the most I genuinely like. I don't I don't even know where to begin with this conversation, and so I'm like, I'm just throwing this up to you, CJ, because
Yeah.
I we've been enamored on in Broncos country.
Hmm.
We've been obsessed all season, or even really even last offseason and whatnot, with the idea that
Hmm.
Sean Payton needs his Joker. He needs a player that just
Hmm.
creates mismatches. And every single time that we have added or
Yeah.
talked about any player, it's been through the lens of, could this be Sean Payton's Joker? And then in free agency, we went out and we got Evan Ingram, a
Hmm.
tight end who I have watched, and he has been productive before, but he's been trapped in places that are
Hmm.
not necessarily known for their positive football culture. Places like the New York
Hmm.
Giants and the Jacksonville Jaguars, where just where good players definitely make sure to shine, especially on dependent positions like tight end. And I have to say, I'm very excited for Evan Ingram. I do not
Hmm.
believe that he is like the new Jimmy Graham, even though that is what everyone is saying. They are
Everyone is
not
saying.
similar players in the way that they win and the way that they even kind of look playing on a football field. But tight end is such a strange position, and I just need to know, is this is Evan Ingram going to be a top question mark tight end?
Yeah. So
Your
I
camera is off, by the way. I don't know if.
yes, sorry. I do have to grab a little charger, get
Oh, yeah.
plugged in
Okay.
here.
Okay.
Um,
That's
yeah. But
that's fine. Actually, I've
yeah.
my question for you. I want you to talk about Evan Ingram, and then I want you to place him in within this quadrant here. Uh, not,
Okay.
uh,
Let's see what we got here.
uh, yeah. So, uh, you have in the top, you have
Okay.
the top left, you have the cryptids, which are players that are good in fantasy, but not actually good football players. Um, you
Uh-huh.
have the
Okay.
dream team, which is where we want our players to be good in both fantasy and in reality. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the full opposite of that are guys that are just fake news. They're bad at both football and fantasy. This is barring his rookie season. This is the Daniel Jones uh, zone. This is the like no, actually, this is like where Anthony
Yeah.
Richardson is like flirting with being banished to for his life. And those are both the Colts quarterbacks. Oh my gosh. Uh, um, and
Yes.
then in the bottom left, my favorite category of player, the foosball players. Listen, these go out there, they play
Uh-huh.
some foosball. They don't put up fantasy points all that well, but they are good in reality. So, um, can
Mm-hmm.
you chart Evan Ingram here for me? Because I just don't know what to make of it.
Oh, oh my goodness. I love this question because you've accurately like there are, you kind of have to take a little bit of humble pie sometimes with fantasy and be just okay with those
Hmm.
cryptids, like, and just be happy to go after it. Like, if someone is good in fantasy, again, like, I don't really care if they are good in reality or not. Like, I care that they're getting me fantasy points. So, um, the time you have to care about that is when, you get like a Anthony Richardson and he gets benched because he's bad in reality, but good for fantasy, and so then you got to get a replacement. But this is a great question. Evan Ingram is somebody. He was the tight end 5 his rookie
Hmm.
season. Everyone thought that he was going to be the guy that came in. That was 2017. He was going to be the guy that came in and fixed tight end. Right. Everyone every year when I'm listening to fantasy content, it's all about like, is tight end fixed? Do we finally have a good roster of tight ends? Because for every other position, right, for quarterback, that position, like, you can start the 15th best
Hmm.
quarterback and get a good week out of him, right? Get a good fantasy week out of him. You can start the 20th wide receiver and get a great week out of him. You can start probably again the 15th running back or
Hmm.
so, between 15 and 20, and get a solid, decent week out of them. If you're starting the 15th tight end, they got you 3 points,
Yeah.
right?
And
Like,
also
it
randomly,
is, it
the
is.
the the backup tight end for the Cardinals caught 2 touchdowns today because they were doing heavy personnel. And
Yes, exactly. And so, like, yeah, it is just truly a position that is a hellscape. And so there are, every year there are like the top 5 tight ends are actually like really great fantasy options. And one of them came out of nowhere because they caught 20 touchdowns, and and then you just have a bunch of other guys that have just randomly kind of caught touchdowns. So all that is to say, I think that Evan Ingram, he was the QB, he was, sorry, the tight end 2
mhm.
2 seasons ago, and he was in 2023, and he was the tight end 5 in 2022, both with Jacksonville. So, the last couple of years he's been really solid, really great, but I think that it was a band-aid, right? The offense running through him and him being so good for fantasy meant that they were feeding the ball to a guy that teams were not necessarily worried about. They were like, oh, they were okay with saying, sure, give it to Evan Ingram as much as you
Mhm.
want, right? Like, and so that kind of makes me think that he was really good in fantasy and like good in real life. Like, I think he's a good real life player, but I think that a bad team is a team that is bad does that type
Mhm.
of thing, right? I think the Broncos being a what I expect to be a high quality offense that has a lot of options, right? That has, again, real football speak. RJ Harvey being your backup and J.K. Dobbins being up front is awesome. Like, that's a two-headed monster that is going to be great for real
Mhm.
football. Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, like Troy Franklin, like all these guys at receiver are going to be really good. Like, and Bo Nix is probably going to disperse the ball really well. And so I think that is going to, again, like we talked about, cap his ceiling.
Mm,
I think he's going to have weeks where, he's going to have 3 targets, 3 catches for maybe like 50 yards, and maybe a touchdown. And that's a good tight end week. But he's not going to be someone the offense runs
okay.
through. And because the Broncos are going to be good, and good offenses rarely run through a tight end. It happens, but it's rare. The Chiefs are an example. They run through they spent a few years running through Travis Kelce. That's a unique situation, right? That's
Right.
not that's the exception, not the rule, right? The Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson, like that's more of an exception, not the rule.
The
Like,
Chiefs had a
you
Hall of
know,
Famer at tight
um,
end, and the Ravens just flat refused to get wide receiver help for the first like 5 years of Lamar
yeah,
Jackson's career. There.
yes, yes, exactly. I mean, and the Patriot, Rob
Mhm.
Gronkowski, like with the Patriots
That
back
was
in
a
the day with Tom
combination of
Brady,
both of
like,
those factors. They were like a Hall of Fame tight end
yeah,
and
like,
just nothing outside of
yes,
receiver. You know.
right. And so when I'm looking at Evan Ingram, I don't see a Hall of Fame tight end, right? I see a good player,
Hmm.
but probably not a Hall of Fame tight end. And so the offense is not going to run. I don't think the offense is going to run through him, and that's a compliment to the Broncos. But it's going to mean that I think if he's having really, he's going to have some big
Hmm.
weeks. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to necessarily be relying on him to repeat a tight end 5 season or a tight end 2 season. I think with the Broncos, he could have a tight end
Okay.
8 season, right? Which is fine. That's good. I'm personally going to be looking to get one of those top
Yeah.
guys.
So honestly he finds himself in a similar place to where Bo Nix is in fantasy, where you're going. He may be a little bit
Yeah.
above the fray of the middle class of of that team, but he's
Yep.
not the top class gated community guys where it's like you need to go out and get Evan Ingram, you need to go out and get one of these
Right.
guys. Okay, I expect, yeah, with the Broncos offense overall, my hope for them, I think it is, probably not realistic to assume that really anyone from the Broncos offense this year is going to be an absolute fantasy stud. But the hope
Hmm.
is that this offense is filled with a whole bunch of foosball players. Just we're just going out and play football with our friends, right? Um, and
Yeah.
I think I agree with that. Like the
Hmm.
the thing that may be a little bit of the difference is potentially is just how does Bo Nix feel about Evan Ingram? Evan Ingram, from what I've seen,
Right.
even talking about him as a tight end is kind of interesting because he
Hmm.
doesn't do the tight end stuff. He's not really one for blocking, which is okay in our system because
Right. Yep.
Sean Payton has dealt with that before. As much as like Jimmy Graham's a
Hmm.
very different player in how he wins as a receiving tight end than Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram's a horizontal. He wins east and west a lot of times. And Jimmy Graham was a vertical threat at tight end. Neither one of those guys were really,
Hmm.
maybe they were interested and willing, but they were not very good at blocking. They're not really, they're more of just like a big wide receiver. So does Evan Ingram become
Yeah.
Bo Nix's safety blanket? Does he become,
Hmm.
like, do we see a lot of like Bo Nix dumped off to his running backs a lot? Like as much as I want to,
Yeah.
I'm always willing to battle the Bo Nix check down king, like those allegations and whatnot.
Hmm.
Um, he was he he did check the ball down a lot. It just wasn't the only thing he
Yeah.
could do. Like it was just like, no, he's
Yeah.
choosing to
Yeah.
do this. Like this is,
Yeah.
this isn't the only thing he can do because my guy does have
Hmm.
like the longest air yards completion in the last 5 or 6 years. Like,
I was so upset when I saw that. I was like, dang it, Rhett is gonna bring this up, isn't he?
um,
Like,
but
yeah.
genuinely,
Yeah.
if he does become that, it could boost his
Yeah.
value. But I don't see it
So,
because the way that Sean Payton's offense works
right.
is it like
Hmm.
a feature in his system is a bug in fantasy, which is he likes to fill his teams with as many viable options as possible. And if he's able to get
Hmm.
guys that are superstars, he'll incorporate them in. But for the most part, his offense is most dangerous when you're not exactly sure who is going to be getting the ball. And so he's not going to be forcing the
Yeah.
ball to Cortland Sutton all the time. He's not going to be forcing the ball to Evan Ingram all the time.
Hmm.
He's not going to be giving a billion touches to either JK or RJ Harvey. He
Right.
wants you to think that there's five guys that can get the ball
Hmm.
every single play. And
Right.
that's not great.
And for fantasy football, that is the opposite
Yeah,
of what you
that's
want. Like, and again, like that's exactly like what, I think a great, I think this is kind of like a bright spot
hmm
maybe, as well as as kind of a downside is, again, I want to say, like, I think the Broncos are going to be a good real football
hmm
team. And so I think that has a inverse correlation with a tight end's usefulness in that system. What I will say though, and again, this is kind of good and bad, is when systems are broken, is when you see guys like that
hmm
shine, right? So again, like I believe it was last season. I have it here somewhere. I believe it was last season. David Njoku, who's the tight end for the
hmm
Browns, went on a stretch with Joe Flacco because the Browns
Their whole
offense
kingdom crumbled.
was absolutely broken, right? Like their offense was completely broken. Deshaun Watson and all that, right? And like so, David Njoku with Joe Flacco went out there and put up, like, 23.6, 17 points, 19 points, 26 points, 17 points, like unbelievable tight end numbers, right? But it was because the offense was
Mhm.
broken. Like, they did not want to be relying on Joe Flacco standing there and just peppering David Njoku with
Mhm.
targets, right? Um, and very similar again, like I was talking about with Evan Ingram. There were years with the Raiders with Darren Waller, where Darren Waller would get like 20 targets a
I
game.
remember those.
Fantastic, yeah, fantastic for fantasy. Love it for fantasy. Not what
Mhm.
the team wants to do. And so they're going to be trying and looking for ways for that not to be their system. So I think, if you see, again, knock on wood, hope it doesn't happen, Cortland Sutton goes down, right? Or, you have a couple injuries in that wide receiver room, then Evan Ingram's value starts to go into the range because he can, like you were kind of talking, fill in that role of maybe a more receiver than actual, classic tight end. So, again, I'm not necessarily banking on that. You never want to really bank on injuries. Um, and again, I think with the Broncos being a good offense, it's unlikely that they're just going to force feed Evan Ingram, which is what you want in fantasy. But maybe, maybe he's a solid option. You grab him in the ninth round. He's a solid option. He's fine. One of those guys gets hurt, out for a couple weeks, and you're ending up winning those weeks because Evan Ingram's getting hyper targeted by Bo Nix for a little
Mm,
bit. So yeah, so a little bit of a silver lining, but again, I wouldn't necessarily bank on it.
okay.
Um, and I do just want to point out as well. Sorry, I'm talking so much. I do just
No,
want
it's
to
good
point out
stuff.
as well, like, um, again, this is the difference between real football and fantasy football. Is you mentioned, like having Sean Payton spreading it out and like wanting the defense to think there's five viable receivers, right? All you need to do for that is target him two or three times a game, right? And he's fulfilled
hmm
that role of being a dangerous threat, as a potential receiver, right? Like, you don't actually in real football have to throw to that guy seven times a game or eight times a game or more, for him to be kind of perceived as that threat, right? He can roll out there and run out there. And even the safety blanket thing, like, I would expect this year, Bo Nix, the game's probably slowed down a little bit more, and maybe he has less
hmm
checkdowns, excuse me, and less, safety valves. So I do think that it's going to dilute. I think Evan Ingram being a good tight end is, if anything, just kind of dilute the field. Um, but I think he is a good player.
Well,
So yeah, hopefully that
speaking
helps.
of the good player versus good fantasy player, um, we're going to talk about Cortland Sutton, and and
Okay.
I have sat and emotionally prepared myself and thought about this conversation beforehand because
Uh-huh.
I have lots of strong feelings about Cortland Sutton, and I know that you
Uh-huh.
have thoughts on Cortland Sutton, and I would love
I do.
to hear your
Uh-huh.
thoughts on Cortland Sutton as a fantasy player, and I will try to remember that we're talking
Uh-huh.
about fantasy.
Okay. So before we get started on this, I have a question for you on I'm just really curious for my own sake how you think about this. Would you say who is okay, so who is the better player? Who's the better? You can be real, fantasy, whatever you like. Who is the better player between these two? Cortland Sutton or
I would say Cortland Sutton is a better player than DJ Moore.
okay. I would like to know who has more receptions. And they both so both of these receivers have been in the league for 7 years.
Okay.
DJ Moore is 28, I think, and Cortland
Mhm.
Sutton's 29, so comparable, comparable age. DJ Moore, just as a reminder, on the Bears for the last 2 years, and he was with the Panthers for the previous five, I believe.
So elite
Who?
offenses,
So yeah, like top tier offense, right? So
receivers
that's
paradise over
yeah.
there. Okay.
So who has more receptions, Cortland Sutton or DJ Moore?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. I don't hear.
Who
You try.
who
Uh,
has more catches of the football in their career, in their very similar careers?
no, I mean they're different styled players. So I would
Yes,
assume
for
DJ
sure.
Moore has more receptions than Cortland Sutton because
Yes.
he wins a lot more underneath. Um, Typically, like he has a lot,
Uh-huh.
like he's running a lot of those routes,
Yeah.
and so he is often a very quick option. So
He
I will
would
say,
it So that is correct. Would it surprise you if I said he has 180 more catches?
that's a big number.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot more.
Okay.
I
Who has
mean,
more yards? Let's say let's go to yards.
yeah.
They're different players. They have different styles. Let's say who has more yards.
I mean, now that I know that DJ Moore has had 180 more opportunities to gain yards than Cortland Sutton, even though
Uh-huh.
like Court's a deep ball receiver, man. But I would say I think that this is a less impressive gap, but then DJ Moore must have more yards than Cortland Sutton.
DJ Moore has 2,200 more yards
Nope,
receiving
that's
than
that is a
Cortland
lot more
Sutton.
yards.
It is a lot more yards. The gap is not smaller. The gap is not smaller. All right, who has more touchdowns?
Well, I'm not gonna say
I
Cortland
think
Sutton.
it's DJ Moore. This is a smaller gap. DJ Moore only has three more touchdowns than Cortland Sutton does.
Okay, all
Um,
right, thank
so
God.
so this is a situation where like this is a perfect example of Cortland Sutton and DJ Moore are going basically next to each other in fantasy drafts.
Mhm,
If anything, in a lot of cases, so I did a couple mock drafts today and over the last couple
mhm.
days. Cortland Sutton typically goes a couple picks before DJ Moore. And DJ Moore has had, I just listed those stats, better stats with, I would probably say, worse offenses, and has better
That is
fantasy
a tough
finishes.
allegation. You are saying that there are worse offenses out there than the last 7 years of the Denver Broncos.
The last 7 years of the Carolina Panthers,
All right, listen, brother.
and last 5 years, and the last 2 years of the Chicago Bears.
I don't know. We've
But
been
here's
pretty historically bad.
this highlights though like a lot of the reason that he's gotten that production is again it's a
Mhm,
bad offense, so they're force feeding and force funneling the ball to one
mhm.
guy, which
Yeah.
for real football is not a viable strategy. For fantasy football, that is a good strategy. So
Hmm.
that is just kind of an encapsulation of where my mind is as I'm trying to evaluate Cortland Sutton.
Hmm.
Now,
He has a much different function. You have convinced me over the last number of years. You've convinced me not to buy a lot of Cortland Sutton fantasy stock. But I will tell
uh,
you that in an equally not real football world,
uh,
there is not. I don't think that there's a receiver in the league right now that has a better mixtape than Cortland Sutton. When we get off of this podcast, I behoove you to watch Cortland Sutton's best catches. The man has three different, at least, or maybe
uh-huh,
two or three
yeah,
different highlights just against the Chargers, just getting open down the right sideline and
mhm.
making a diving one-handed catch for a touchdown on multiple occasions against the same team. Um,
Yeah. Did
his
that get
highlight.
him? Did that help him finish higher than DJ Moore this year in fantasy?
It doesn't matter because it's the same real life.
What about last year?
It
What
doesn't.
about the year before that?
Listen, but if we
What
were in the
about the year
world,
before that?
I would say that YouTube views is the same amount of fantasy is,
Okay.
if we're, it's all, what depends on what kind of
Uh-huh.
fantasy you're talking about. So we all
Uh-huh.
have
Okay.
our fake football. There's fake football all-stars of many kinds. And
Mhm.
maybe DJ Moore is a fake football all-star of fantasy. But
Uh-huh.
let me tell you, Cortland Sutton is the GOAT
Uh-huh.
of fake football highlight reel catches because he
Well,
spent his entire career just losing with an
uh-huh.
offense that the only real consistent form of offense we've had for the last 7 years has been, well, we finally got it past the 50. What if we throw one down to court and see if he comes up with it?
And I cannot stress enough that is DJ Moore's last that is DJ Moore's entire career is the same thing. But I listen, I kind of I came in and I was a little harsh with DJ Moore as the example there. So let's lower the bar a little bit.
No,
You're gonna love this. This is gonna
don't
be your
lower the
favorite
bar.
thing.
The bar is
Uh,
fine.
how do you feel about how do you feel if I say let's play a game? Cortland Sutton or Jacoby Myers?
Well, obviously, Cortland Sutton is a better football player than Jacoby Myers.
Let's check the tape. So, Jacoby Myers, wide receiver for the New England Patriots, and then a couple of years ago moved over to the Oakland Raiders. Well, I guess the Las Vegas Raiders now.
Hmm.
Um, he is. Let's say who has more yards, Jacoby Myers or Cortland Sutton?
Well, I'm gonna say Cortland Sutton.
Yes, Cortland Sutton does have more yards.
All right.
He's got about like see 400. He's got about 800 yards on Jacoby Myers.
You're dang right.
Who has more receptions?
Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton.
In six less games. So Cortland Sutton has played more games than Jacoby Myers. In six less games, Jacoby Myers has about 20 more receptions than Cortland Sutton. So if you're
Well,
looking at a PPR league, so point per reception league, those receptions do add up a little bit. So
it's dumb. This honestly, this feels like what it must
uh-huh,
be to be a parent of like a kid playing youth sports,
uh-huh.
and like they get done with the game and they're like, "Did I do a good job, Dad?" And you're like, "Did great."
Yeah, that
So
was
honestly,
real
it was
good.
awesome. It was real good. This conversation is
Uh-huh.
actively
You're hurting
aggressing
your
on me.
soul.
I don't
All right, so
so okay.
I would love to. So we're going to go into again. This is fantasy, so we're going to go into some
Hmm.
fantasy information here. So I will just I will give you for free that the average fantasy finish in their careers, and I am taking out Cortland Sutton's injured year. So he had 1 year where he had, I think it was 2019, where he played one game
Yeah.
and was out for the rest of the season. So I've taken that out. So Jacoby Myers has averaged the wide receiver 42 in PPR, in fantasy and PPR. Cortland Sutton has averaged the wide receiver 34.
See,
So a little bit better there.
Jacoby Myers is
Um,
absolutely trash.
so in so we're going to look at in 20, let's see, 21, 22, in 2021, who had the better fantasy finish?
Well, okay, who was our quarterback in 2021?
Yeah.
2021 was we were really trying Drew Lock that year. So, eh,
The Patriots were trying Mac Jones.
yeah,
So
that was Mac Jones's good year. That was his good rookie. That was his rookie year, I think. Um, that was actually the last time the Broncos played in New England that year. I remember it because it was
Ooh.
still COVID and you couldn't get seats. And the Denver Broncos have not played in Gillette whenever I've been able to get there since I moved to New England 8 years ago. So this is ridiculous. And they don't play there this year.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure what's going on. I will say that Cortland Sutton had a worse fantasy year because I remember that offense, and that was a god awful offense.
Yep. So Jacoby Myers finished 30th. Cortland Sutton finished 44th. What about
Yeah,
2022?
well, 2022
Mhm.
was the year of uh that was I believe Teddy Bridgewater,
Mhm.
uh because no, 21 was Bridgewater. 22 was I don't know who
So now that you're
was
done stalling,
Bridgewater. Yeah,
who?
I'm gonna say that Cortland Sutton did. I did say Jacoby Myers had a better year. 2022.
Jacoby Myers did have a better year. He improved on his
Mhm.
number, going up to 28, and Cortland Sutton improved his number going up to 43.
Okay,
In
hey.
in 2023, who had the better season?
See, now he might have. Court caught a bunch of touchdowns from Russ, but that was 24. 23, he only caught like three. So it's got to still be Jacoby Myers.
Still Jacoby Myers.
Yeah.
So 24, he was a wide receiver two, got up to the wide receiver two, is the 24th receiver. Cortland Sutton was the 35th receiver.
Okay.
So now we
We'll
come
make it.
to last season. So now we're in last season. Who had the better
Mhm.
fantasy finish?
Jacoby Myers was actually a really good fantasy player last
Yeah, he
year.
was really good. He was really good.
Like I remember, like they talked about him on podcasts. So
Uh-huh.
it's gotta be Jacoby Myers again. Dang it.
So here's the thing. It was Cortland Sutton over the course of the season, but Cortland Sutton played 17 games. Jacoby Myers missed 2 weeks. So if we look at the points per game, Jacoby Myers beat Cortland Sutton in points per game.
Yeah,
So
that's a loser's argument.
I think
That's
so he still finished. Jacoby Myers finished as the 19th wide receiver, and Cortland Sutton was the 15th. Uh,
oh, you get him a
and
quarterback. All of a
but
sudden
what
putting
and
up DJ
so
Moore numbers.
this is not actually not close to DJ Moore numbers. No, it was good. DJ Moore still beat him. DJ Moore. I didn't play that game with DJ Moore because he smoked Cortland Sutton.
Listen, DJ Moore's
Um,
just a good DJ Moore.
a good wide receiver.
Well, yeah, and he's the kind where you just throw the ball to him all the time.
Yes. So to go off from here, the point that I'm really trying to make is, again, I think I started off when we were talking about Bo Nix, talking about value, right?
Hmm.
And talking about like the value that these guys have when you draft them. Cortland Sutton is going at around the back of the fifth. So, I have him in a mock here, in a one quarterback league. At about 5'10", so fifth round, 10th pick. I have another mock where he actually went at the 5'1", so beginning of the fifth round.
Hmm.
And when I'm looking at a draft, and I'm looking at Cortland Sutton and what he did last season, when he ended the season on a tear with Bo Nix of going
Hmm.
like 18 points per game, like he is a good wide receiver. Despite everything I'm joking about, like he's a good wide receiver. I think he's going where he should be going. However, if I ask you, do you want to draft Cortland Sutton in the fifth, or do you want to draft Cortland Sutton in the ninth? What would you say? I basically said that Jacoby Myers over the last, like Jacoby Myers also now, Geno Smith, who's the quarterback for the Raiders this season, is probably the best quarterback that Jacoby Myers has played with. Jacoby Myers has basically performed at or a little bit above Cortland Sutton for the last 5 years. He has improved his fantasy finish every single year. And so I would not be surprised at all if Jacoby Myers is very similar to Cortland Sutton. And so when we're talking about a similar player that is going 3 rounds later, 4 rounds later, I'd
Mhm.
rather just take that, because then I can cheat and take Jacoby Myers maybe a round early, and I'm
Mhm.
still getting better value for that same level of player. And so when I'm looking at the draft and I say, okay, instead of Cortland Sutton in the fifth, I'm going to get Cortland Sutton light. I'm going to get Jacoby Myers in the eighth. Who else do I get in the fifth instead? I could have, I'm looking at right here. You could get
Well, you
Devonte
could totally get
Adams
RJ
was
Harvey.
you could, but like Devonte Adams, right? Who's with
Okay.
the Rams? You could get Devonte Adams, Chuba Hubbard, Kenneth Walker, Devonte Smith, DJ Moore, Joe Burrow, and Patrick Mahomes are still around at that time if that's what if you're interested in. Rashi Rice, James Conner, if you're looking at tight end at that point, Sam Laporta, TJ Hawkinson, Isaiah Pacheco, all of those guys are right around there. And if I can get the same value a little bit later, I'd probably rather take, again, a DJ Moore. Alvin Kamara is there, right? Kenneth Walker, if I'm looking for a little bit higher level running back, right? I'd rather take Kenneth Walker in the fifth than, let's say, Tony Pollard or, you know, uh, Brian Robinson in the eighth or something like that,
Hmm.
right? So really, it's a value question. I think this comes down to when I'm looking at the Broncos, I'm saying actually they're priced pretty well. I think Cortland Sutton's going to have a really good season. I think Bo Nix is going to have a really good season. But I think that there are guys that are going to have pretty similar seasons that I can pick out later in the draft that will let me get higher value where guys like
Mm.
Cortland Sutton and Bo Nix are being drafted.
So you're saying we've gotten too much press this year, like
Mm.
because we finished that season strong.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
honestly, because
Yep.
the Cincinnati Bengals lost their first 3 games of the year, and we were able to get that playoff spot where like
Mhm.
uh we had the strong 10-6 season, but like we're the
Mhm.
team that got into the playoffs at 10-6.
Yeah.
Um, that gave national media time to see and know these names. And like honestly,
Mhm.
Denver, as much as we've been awful for the last like decade, we are one of the big market franchises of the NFL, weirdly enough. Like we operate as one of those. The national
Mhm.
media, when we're good, wants to talk about us. And our offense that honestly is in a place where this season we're looking at it and going, oh, it could be good. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of signs pointing towards,
Mhm.
a lot of green flags pointing towards this could be a productive offense, and there could be some guys that could go off. And if Cortland Sutton is as good as he was last year, and especially, if you're projecting out the mid, because like Bo Nix, I don't know if you watched his, like if you saw like the way his
Mhm.
season played out, he was worse than bad. His first four
Yeah.
weeks, he was like
Mhm.
he was almost unwatchable, and then like he floated a duck of a pass to Cortland Sutton in week 4 and finally got his first career touchdown pass and like almost overthrew him when there was no one within 10 yards of it. Like
Yeah.
it was so
Uh,
close. And from that moment on, like week
yeah.
3, week 4, I think was he figured it out against Tampa Bay. Like the
Mhm.
second half of the season, if that bears out, it's going to be really good. But the truth about the NFL is that not all progress is linear. And
Yeah.
so a lot of the guys in fantasy, we
Mhm.
are projecting out some of the that they're probably going to have their like higher level outcomes, right? Like their higher
Right.
percentile outcomes.
Right.
And you don't need to open yourself up to that much risk. Like for Cortland Sutton
Yeah.
to be worth the draft stock that you're putting in him, we have to
Hmm.
assume that this is finally like the he's had other seasons where it's really come together for him, and
Hmm.
he's had runs like just God, the Broncos have been an awful like just a snake bitten awful franchise for the last several years. Like anytime we get something rolling,
Yeah.
like it's an injury or something that throws it off again. But um, if everything goes well, he's worth being a fifth round pick.
Hmm.
But you're
Right.
just having to assume that, and so
Yeah.
um, I can. I can see that. I do want to know. It's about time for us to wrap up the show.
Hmm.
Honestly, it's so funny. We were like, "Is this going to be enough content?" And then I should have known that the two
Yeah.
of us uh,
Gab.
could easily fill this time. But what what I want to know from just
Hmm.
your outside perspective on this offense and what you talked about, like. Um, what should we be excited for as fans like make us happy because you just told us that Cortland Sutton's a pedestrian man walking around selling furniture and I want
Uh-huh.
to end on it. I want to end on something good.
Yeah.
What do you see for the Broncos just in general, their real
Mhm.
world outcome? How do you feel about them as a team going into the season here 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've mentioned it like a few times. I'm in on the real world Broncos. I think that one of the things that I see like as I'm looking at fantasy and as I'm trying to find, secret value and try to see, if there's somebody that's going to take a step forward, right? Somebody individually that's going to take a step forward. One of the markers that I see on really good teams and on, teams that have really good fantasy options, especially, is like consistency with the leadership, right? When you
Hmm.
have consistent coaching, you look at the Lions, right? What
Hmm.
they've done over the last 5 years is incredible. They got some people in there that had a long-term vision, that were charismatic and and passionate. They got the people they wanted, and they built something that had amazing fantasy results, but also like clearly amazing real world football, Um, and I think there are a couple teams like the Texans, they're kind of on an upwards trajectory, making the playoffs, and they're having some consistency. Oh, sorry, the Lions, like one of the things I wanted to mention, like they kept their coaching staff intact really until this year, but they kept
Yeah.
that core intact for so long. They've had the same quarterback for several years, right? Like
Yeah.
that matters. And so for the Broncos, I see like they're bringing back wide receivers. The running backs are new, but that's okay. The running backs are a little bit more interchangeable. Bo Nix is going to have his second year. Like Sean Payton is a whatever you want to think about him. He's a good, proven NFL coach. Like the staff is going to be consistent for Bo Nix to get that growth. So I mean, I think the only real downside and deep challenge I think the Broncos is going to face or that they'll face is that they are in one of probably the two toughest divisions in football. Like maybe not quite what it's been, but I think the Raiders are dangerous. They'll be a thorn in your side. The Chargers are never going to be out of it because they've also got a couple studs on offense and have know how to play you guys. And the Chiefs are the Chiefs, so I think that's going to be something that's a little bit difficult to overcome. But like, dude, I'm excited. I think there's no reason why the Broncos shouldn't win 10 games. Like, I absolutely think they should be winning 10 games, if not more. I think a ceiling outcome is like, is the one seed possible? If everyone hits their ceiling, yeah, of course it is. Yeah, absolutely. Like, their defense is
Ooh,
unbelievable. Like,
ooh,
I
one
could
seed.
see. I could see it. Like if you told me, if you put me in a time machine, like told me that the Broncos were the one seed this year, I'd be like, yeah, sure. I believe it. Um, if they miss the playoffs, I think I'd be surprised. I'd be disappointed, right? I'd be disappointed if they
Hmm.
miss the playoffs. I think they are certainly a playoff team. Probably that means the likely outcome is going to be a wild card spot, but you never know.
Well, you heard it here first. CJ objectively said that the one seed is on the table, so I will say that the one seed is inevitable.
Is
It is It is going to happen this year. Look at our schedule. Find the losses for me. We only have teams like the old decrepit Kansas City Chiefs and the Super Bowl hungover Philadelphia Eagles that we have to play this year. The
yeah,
Chargers, they've lost Ryan Slater, Ryan Slater, what the heck?
yeah,
Rashawn Slater
yeah.
to for the year because God hates them for whatever reason. Uh,
It's
and the
true.
Raiders have no defense whatsoever, and the Bills and the Ravens have shown an inability to win in the playoffs, so I don't need to worry about them. Joe Burrow still doesn't have a defense, so obviously one seed undefeated Denver Broncos Super Bowl champion. That's what CJ said. You heard it here
Ah,
first in his words. Dr. Siege has prescribed the Denver Broncos a Super Bowl. CJ, thank you for coming on and saying those things.
oh,
Uh,
okay. Thank you very much
no.
for having me on the podcast to say some of those things.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. We as we leave, I leave you with this thought. Um, I'm gonna draft J.K. Dobbins right
No,
before you.
no, don't do it. Don't do it.
All right. Well, as we figure out the cat and mouse chess game of who's going to draft J.K. Dobbins first, we will leave you all to it. And honestly, we are an hour away from Denver Broncos preseason football, and I'm so excited. And I several times thought about doing a segment where like we talked about the upcoming game and like who might be good, and then
Uh-huh.
I remembered, CJ, you're not a Broncos fan. You don't know
I
any of
yeah.
the. You can't talk.
I don't know any of them. Yeah.
I wanted to be like, what are you gonna see from Audric Estimate today? And like, no, we don't know. But I'm excited. Thank you so much. This has been a good conversation.
Yeah.
And until then, guys, we need to remember that here at Long Distance Kicks, it's always good. Uh, so we'll see you next time.
Bye bye.
Oh, I don't have the outro
The little
today.
outro queued up.
I'm so done. So I'm just gonna end the stream. Bye bye, everyone.